Hello, and welcome back to my TED Talk.
Hope I never wake up from this dream. I'ma always keep you on my team. You make me sing like.
What is up, everyone? I hope everyone is having a fantastic day. I don't know why I've just been like singing all my words lately. I kind of like it. So today I'm going to be doing my very first story time. Today I wanted to tell you guys how Zach and I met. Aww. Stop. So to tell you how Zach and I met, I first have to take you back a little bit. So about a year and a half before I met Zach, I was dating this guy, and we were pretty serious. We talked about marriage a lot. I mean, I was like 19. Obviously, that would have been a bad idea, okay? And things ended, and it was really hard on me because they ended not really suddenly, like things were going bad for a little while. When they ended, like the day that they ended, was sudden, I guess. Basically, I'm telling you, I got dumped. I'm mostly kidding, actually. It was fairly mutual, but it was a shocking event that I didn't know was gonna happen that day, okay? So after that, I was very like closed off. I didn't really want a relationship after that, you know what I'm saying? So at the time I was working at Panera. While I was working at Panera, almost every day I would hang out with my friend Wyatt, who I have known since I was like probably 13. And he at the time was working at a Jimmy John's, and he was a delivery driver. And he was always telling me like, come work at Jimmy John's, it's the best job, like come work there, every single time that we would talk. And you know, I kept telling him, no, I really like my job. I don't want to be a delivery driver and put like all those miles on my vehicle and everything. I got fired from Panera, actually. I was obviously like really upset. If you've ever been fired from a job, it's like really shocking. You're kind of like, okay, what am I gonna do now? This is, you know, just happened right now. You weren't expecting it. So yeah, I was super upset. And I ended up leaving Panera and going straight to my friend Raina's house. So then I'm sitting, hanging out with her, and this thought pops into my head, oh, Wyatt said that he can get me a job, like really easily, at Jimmy John's. So I ended up texting Wyatt and asking him, you know, if I can come and apply. And he's gonna put in a good word for me. I'm probably gonna get the job right away, right? So I leave Raina's house and I go straight to Jimmy John's, and I walk into Jimmy John's. I swear I'm gonna tell this to our kids one day. I walk into Jimmy John's and I walk up to the register, and it's like really dead in there. Zach is working at Jimmy John's, and he's standing like further in the back, like almost in the back. And he literally sees me come in and like go up to the register, and he just like beelines for me. And there's like other people coming to the register that are like right there, and he's just like, no, like, I'ma help her out. So, so he's like, you know, how can I help you? And I was like, oh, I'm actually here because I want to fill out a job application. And, you know, his face is just like, oh, hell yeah. Just thinking of this is so funny and just like adorable. So he goes to the back to get an application and comes out, and he's like, my manager would like to talk to you, so whenever you're done filling out the job application, he's gonna come out and talk to you. So I'm like, cool. So I'm sitting there filling out the job application, turn it in, and he's like, okay, just wait, my manager's gonna come out. So I go and sit back down, and I'm like sitting there, and I just keep looking over, and Zach is just sitting there like this, and he's just like staring at me, not even trying to hide it. And I just like am sitting there, and I'm like, okay, are we still okay? I was like slightly creeped out, but I was also like, he's pretty cute, so whatever. I was like a little strange, but I was like, okay, I'm kind of digging your vibe, honey. Okay, so anyway, the manager comes out and we're talking, and he ends up giving me the job right there on the spot, which is awesome. So a couple of days later, I start the job. You know, the first like couple of weeks, Zach was like really shy. He's still pretty shy, and so he was just kind of like observing me from afar. Okay. And you know, I was talking to other people there, I was making friends, and basically just kind of pushing Zach to the side. I wasn't like blowing him off or anything, but he wasn't really talking to me either. So Zach and I do start like hanging out as friends a little bit. I did notice Zach a lot. He was always with his friend, and they were always joking back and forth and just like having a good time. He was really funny, and I just like enjoyed his vibe, you know? Then Zach and I started hanging out as friends in a group. It started to become like an everyday thing. We would all get off at the same time and we would always hang out every day. And I started to like, you know, talk to Zach a little bit more, and I like had a little bit of a crush on him, but I wasn't looking for anything, keep in mind. I was also planning on moving to Colorado with a group of like 3 or 4 friends. We were planning on moving within like 6 months from the time that I started working at Jimmy John's, and so it just wouldn't have made much sense. I started to crush on Zach a little more. I would be hanging out with Wyatt and I'm like asking him questions about him. Well, come to find out that Zach had been doing the same thing and asking Wyatt since we had known each other for so long. So what we didn't know was that Wyatt didn't want us to get together because at the time he was like having a little thing for me. So Wyatt would be telling Zach and I different information that would just kind of like turn us off about each other. For one, I was 20, I was about to be 21. So I asked, you know, how old is Zach? And Wyatt was like, he's like 17 or 18 maybe. But Zach was also 20. And then I guess he was telling Zach things about me, I don't know. So he was just really trying hard to not have us be together, which is like so funny now that we look back at it. You know, when people say when you know, you know, it's really true. Like you might not even know, but you know. You know? It was just like natural and like fun to hang out with him. He was pretty awkward. And so I asked him if he wanted to hang out like the next day or whatever it was. We were driving around, talking, listening to music, and just hanging out. And he was so awkward. I would just be like trying to start a conversation with him and he was just so quiet. I remember I was like, so what's your favorite color? Because the conversation was so dead, and he just like started laughing and he was like, blue, I guess. And I was like, all right, okay. After we like parted our ways, I was just kind of like, okay. I remember I was like, you know what? I have a crush on him, so I'm gonna like push things along a little bit. I had a dream about him the night before, and so the next day I remember all day I was contemplating, should I text him and be like, I had a dream about you? Well, it turned out that night my friend Raina and I were drinking, having fun at her apartment, and you know, I was a little tipsy, a little bit feeling myself, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just text him, I don't even care. And so I texted him, I was like, I had a dream about you last night. And I was like, send. And that started a conversation really between us. I don't know if it was pretty soon after I had texted him that. He asked me if I wanted to come over and hang out with him. And so I went over to his house. So he just came outside and we just walked around. He's from this little town called Cherry Valley that's like a half hour away from where I was living. It's just like this tiny little town that has cherry trees everywhere that you can just pick cherries and eat them. You can just walk around. It's like the cutest little town ever. So we were just walking around and talking and having fun. We went to this park. We were just walking and talking for like hours. We went to the top of this hill and we were just sitting and talking for a long time. I don't know, it was just like all day we were hanging out with each other and it was really cool. After a while there started like, you know, all the insects started to come out, the sun was setting. I was like, well, I should probably get going. And he's like, wait, before you go, can I ask you a question? And I was like, yeah, what is it? And he's like, can I give you a kiss? So of course I'm like, yeah, you can kiss me. And so we kissed, and I just remember like the first kiss, I was like, wow. It was big to me like a person's lips, like how they fit with my lips, his just like fit perfectly with mine, which sounds so lame, but it's true. And we ended up walking back to his house and kissing a little bit more, you know. And I just remember leaving and I was like, what is this feeling right now? I told myself I was not gonna get committed to anyone. I didn't want a relationship. I was moving. So the next day or a couple of days later, he texted me and he's like, hey, we need to talk. Can you come over at some point today? Before I went over, I was like, he's just gonna end things, like it's no big deal. So I go over to his house. He just tells me that he had just gotten out of a 5-year relationship, but he just told me that he just wants to take things really slow with me. And then I ended up telling him, like, I am planning on moving to Colorado. I don't want anything serious, so like we can hang out and everything, but you know, I'm not looking for anything. So after that, we would hang out, but it was really, really casual. How we describe it now is we were both kind of like not trying to be with each other. Neither of us wanted anything serious, and we had said that before, and you know, our feelings just kept growing for each other, so we were both just kind of like, whoa. So we were both just kind of pushing each other away, but as the universe will have it, just kept pushing us back together. It was really hard to hang out with him for a while. He would blow me off. He would say like, hey, let's hang out today, and then I wouldn't hear from him again for like several hours, and then he'd be like, oh, sorry, my phone died. When really, like, I know now that he was just hanging out with his friends and he was just kind of like scared and didn't want to continue having these feelings for me. Okay. Bane wanted to be up here. We were just barely hanging out. We were growing feelings for each other, but we were pushing each other apart. Where are you going? So one time, we both got off work at the same time and we had planned on hanging out that day. And so he's like, oh, right at the end of our shift, he was like, yeah, I have to go move a mattress for my sister, but why don't you just, okay, Bane, you're stealing my spotlight. But he just told me, why don't you just chill here for a little bit, and I'll just go move the mattress for my sister, and then I'll come back and then we can hang out. Like, we had planned on hanging out and everything, so I had brought a change of clothes and like some makeup just to do like some touch-ups and everything to work with me, so it was in my car. I brought my clothes into the bathroom, changed in the bathroom, was touching my makeup up. I may have even straightened my hair, honestly, who knows? And then I'm just sitting there, just waiting. A half hour passes, an hour passes. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I remember we had planned to go to the mall just to like shop or hang out, whatever. And so I'm like texting him like, so should I just go home? Like, what's going on? I can't remember what he said, but he was like, basically, let's hang out like later. And I ended up needing to go to the mall, so I went to the mall anyway, and I'm just like walking around, shopping, whatever, and I was on the lower level and there's like a balcony, and I'm like walking, and he didn't know I was at the mall. So I'm walking and I look up, and lo and behold, there's Zach with his friend that we work with, just like standing there, and his friend just like, you know, is like waving back at me, and he's just like, look, Zach is just looking at me, and I'm just like, okay, whatever, like what the heck. So I like turned around and started walking towards the elevator, and I'm like looking at him like, I'm coming up there to talk to you, you know, like, why are you here? You said that you were helping your sister. And I go up to the second level and he's gone. Him and his friend are just gone, and I'm like, okay. I ended up texting him and I'm like, hey, and he didn't text me back like at all. Literally, this happened several times. Like, I want to say like 4 or 5 times where he would be like, hey, let's hang out, and then I would like get ready and everything, and then he kept pushing the time back, pushing the time back, pushing the time back, and then we just like wouldn't hang out. So yeah, one day he basically did the same thing again, but I was like at work. Okay, I think this is what happened. I'm like fairly positive, but I feel like Zach's gonna watch this video later and be like, that's not what happened, because I have the worst memory. I just remember we were both at work and I went out for delivery towards the end of our shift, and I got back and we were supposed to hang out, and I got back to the Jimmy John's and he had gotten off, clocked out, and left. And so I texted him and I was like, so like, are we not hanging out? What is this? I don't remember what his response was, but finally I was like, you know what, Zach, this was fun, like, but this isn't working out. You know, you've done this several times. I'm not gonna continue to do this. So basically he was just like, I'm really sorry. I, you know, feel like a jerk, and this has just been all like a lot for me, and I'm really sorry. And, you know, I hope that you change your mind, because I really think that this could have been something really great. But you're great and all this stuff. And it was just like such a sweet message, and I was just like, dang, like, did I just ruin this? But then, I don't know. There was just all these thoughts like, did I just ruin this? He is a really great guy. We have a lot of fun together. But then at the same time, he keeps blowing me off, and neither of us are understanding what's going on. I remember that night I was just at home and I just started crying, and he had like kind of been texting me and just like apologizing, but I was just ignoring it. I remember my mom came in and she's like, you know, if you're really having this strong of feelings for him, maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe you're supposed to be in each other's lives, at least for the time being, or maybe forever. So I was just like, dang, Mom, like, you're right. So I ended up texting him and I was just like, hey, where are you? And he told me he was at his friend's house, and I knew where his friend lived. I had been there a couple times. And so I was like, can I come see you right now? And he's like, yeah. So I get in my car, and it's like late at night. It was probably like 11 o'clock at night. And he just came out to the car, and I was just like, you know, I'm really upset. I don't know why. And I've never had this like feeling before. I wasn't telling him that I was in love with him, but it was just like, there's something different here, and I'd like to see where this can go, but you gotta change, buddy. You gotta shape up, okay? Stop canceling on me. Stop blowing me off. That's not cool. I'm not just a girl that's just gonna sit around and wait for a guy. That's not me. So he was like, all right, let's do it. I'm happy, like, let's go. So then I went to California a couple days later, and when I came back, I don't know, we just like started dating after that. We ended up becoming boyfriend or girlfriend. We couldn't keep our hands off of each other. Every time that we worked together, like, he would go into the back and like lock eyes with me, and then I would be like, ooh, gotta get something from the back, and run to the back, and we would just like kiss and just like laugh and giggle. And it came known that everyone that we worked with, they were just like, oh my gosh, like, they're back there again, like making out. Oh my gosh, I was just smitten. We both were. We ended up I don't know, just getting really serious. The move to Colorado didn't work out with the friends that I had planned on going there with. We ended up taking a trip to Florida. His sister and her now fiance, and then her daughter, lived there, and they had this cute little house right outside of Tampa. So we went and visited, and it was just so much fun. And I remember when we left, Zach was so upset. Like, he was just crying, and he was just really, really upset because his niece is like everything to him. So we were on the plane, and I just remember thinking like, man, I really, really love this guy, and I like want to make him happy. And so I was just like, do you want to move to Florida? And I remember he just like stopped crying. He didn't say anything, but he just stopped crying. And I was like, I think I'm gonna move to Florida. So yeah, we just started planning a move to Florida, and we ended up doing it like 5 or 6 months later. We moved to Florida. We were living with his sister for a few months, and it just ended up being a really difficult time for us. I won't get into too much detail, but we ended up breaking up, and I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't really have much money, and so I was going to move with my aunt, whom I've never met. She's just my aunt. She lives in Florida. Then my mom told me, why don't you live with grandma? And my grandma lives in Atlanta, which is like 7 or 8 hours away. So it was a really difficult time, but my grandma drove from Atlanta to Tampa and picked me up. It was really upsetting. It was just like, I really liked this guy, and this was my plan, and now my plan's been uprooted, and I have to start over again in Georgia. After like not too long, Zach and I started talking again, just talking, you know, we were both going through this really emotional thing. We were just kind of there for each other, and we were just talking each other through everything, and it just turned into we really missed each other. He actually drove from Florida to Georgia on his long weekends. Like if he had a 3-day weekend, he would drive up and see me. He did that 2 or maybe 3 times. During that time, I decided to join the Air Force, basically because I had no plan. And so I was signing up for it and everything. Zach at first was like not really on board because it scared him, but then, you know, he became on board and he was like, all right, let's do this, which is a huge, huge deal. Like for someone to say, all right, like if this is what you want to do, then let's do it together. So Zach and I decided to get married. He kept asking me and kept asking me. And I was just like, no, like, let's hold off. Let's wait until I'm like out of basic or out of tech school, and then let's get married. And I just remember sitting on my grandma's porch one day, and I was just looking around at all the birds and the nature and everything, because my grandma has this huge backyard and a bunch of bird feeders, so there's always these gorgeous birds in her backyard. And I was just like, I think I want to get married. I just want to be with him forever. I had already had this trip planned, and so I was just like, dang, let's go, let's do this. And I FaceTimed Zach and I was like, will you marry me? And this smile on his face. So yeah, we ended up, I went to Florida, and that same day he picked me up from the airport, and then we went straight to Clearwater Beach, and he proposed to me. It was really great. We went straight from there to Zales and picked out a couple of rings that we really loved, put it on a credit card, and that was it. Basically, we were engaged. So we had to go apply for a marriage certificate, and then you have to wait 3 days before you can get married. So we went and applied for the marriage certificate, waited 3 days, and we went and got married. And my she's my niece too now. My niece was obviously super like happy about it, which was so great. I love her. Nevaeh, if you're watching this video, I love you. So anyway, then I went off to basic training like maybe a week or 2 after we got married. He visited me twice when I was in tech school, and tech school is only 3 months long, so he came twice to see me, which was obviously very special. And after tech school, you know, I got my orders to Montana. So yeah, then we came to Montana, and the rest is history, I guess. No marriage is perfect. You know, we have our ups and downs, but Zach was always the one. He just was. And looking back at it now, I know that the reason I couldn't give this up, the reason I couldn't stay away from him, and the reason we couldn't stay away from each other was because we were meant to be together. So there's my happy story of how I met my husband. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Say bye!